concerts, benefits for Katrina, which people from all over the world had said yes to and came together, like the Madison Square Garden thing. And I began doing gigs, because I wasn't gigging before. I did about 3 gigs a year. But after Katrina, I actually started touring. Elvis and I did a couple of tours. We did one as a duet.
Born in a shotgun shack in New Orleans, Alan Toussaint rose to become one of the most influential musicians, composers, and arrangers in the music business, writing songs that have been covered by the likes of the Rolling Stones, Dr. John, Robert Palmer, the Meters, Lee Dorsey, and dozens more. Still touring in his mid-70s, we caught up with the self-effacing master in Syracuse, New York.
Oh, I want to start by asking you a little bit something about your very early life, because my understanding is that you were attracted to playing the piano at a very early age. In fact, you were attracted to playing your sister's piano, is the way I understand it. But what was the appeal? Do you remember that far back?
Yes, my first introduction to the piano was when they set this big piece of furniture in the front room. I walked over to it, and it just looked so massive to me. I was somewhat 6.5, and I touched it, and it gave me a pleasant sound, as opposed to trying to blow a trumpet for the first time. It sounded like a baby elephant. But I just thought that was wonderful that with me not knowing anything, it could give me a pleasant sound. So I knew right away I could get used to this.
Yeah.
Yes.
You had a facility for it, though, did you not? Right from the beginning, like it was more than just that aesthetic appeal. You had a capacity to be able to play it.
Well, I learned that later. That yes, but yes, I got right to it. The next day, I remember eagerly waking up to go and see about this big piece of furniture that gave me this nice sound, and I began picking out little simple melodies, and I'm glad to say that early on I understood the structure. 2 black keys, 3, 2 blacks, 2, 3. And once you get up to 7, it's another octave. I understood that quite well. My sister began taking music lessons. And I was having fun trying to pick out things by heart or by ear. And she hated music lessons because she had a teacher that spanked her hand. But she was a smart girl, and she was one who could tell me, this what you're playing here is there on the page. So I saw that it was more than just fun. I had to begin learning something. So that's how it got started. Yeah.
But you for a while, didn't you go to music school and it didn't take?
I took about 8 lessons altogether in my life. But it was too late because the Boogie Woogers had me already. Ammons and all of them, and Pine Top and all of that had me. And then I heard Professor Longhair. Yeah. And my mother saw that I was so interested. She thought, of course, the way is to go take some lessons. And I believe in that too now. But I didn't do my homework. I never did learn Gertrude and Elizabeth the way I should have. So she gave up on me after about 6 lessons, and I tried a couple more later. And I was too impatient because I was having such a good time playing by ear. Yeah. But I am one who is a strong believer in the system of learning and taking lessons as long as you can, forever, if you will. Yeah.
Tell me about the influence of Fess, because he influenced so many people, but he really made an impact on you, didn't he?
Professor Longhair, when I heard that, knocked my socks off. Yeah. Yes, he wasn't the most conventional extrapolation from someone else, because most other things you could see the relationship of where else it fits in the society. Professor Longhair, I didn't see the links of that chain intact. He was just out of the clear blue to me. And it was so final. Everything he played had such a finishing touch to it, and he felt grand about it too. He felt as grand as Mozart or anyone else. And you could hear that in his playing, and I heard it very early on. And I began to pick out everything I could of his, and waiting for the next recording to come out. Yeah. And I just dearly loved him. And he also had not only a way of playing, but he had a vernacular, a way of talking. He had a language that I guess you could devise a whole nother system of speaking, because he could talk to one of his friends around you without you knowing what they're saying.
But Mac Rebennack could do that too, I've noticed.
Of course.
Same kind of thing.
Well, we're all disciples of Fest now. We have learned the language, you might say.
Okay.
Oh yeah, no one does it better than Mac.
Yeah.
There could be a Mac dictionary.
It's true.
He has the same kind of edumacation, you might say.
That's right.
He's a wonderful ambassador for us, Dr. John.
Tell me a little bit about the early years when you started doing. You were working in the studio. You were brought in a lot to play in the style of other people,
yes.
right? Yes. To do things like that. Again, showing, I guess, that you had a facility to be able to mimic other people's styles if you had to. How did you come by that? Was just listening? That's all by ear? That's just absorption on your part?
Well, when I first started playing and began to understand and hear the outside world somewhat, I figured all piano players could play everything that I heard. I was the only one who couldn't play that yet. So I tried to play everything that I heard because I thought all of the rest of them could. I didn't know they were specialists. I remember hearing Grieg's Piano Concerto, and my mother bought an Emerson record player, and during that time, when you buy a record player, they gave you 2 albums. And she had these 2 albums that came with a classical and an old swing album. And Grieg's Piano Concerto was one of them. And when I heard that, I thought, good heavens, I had better get to work because everyone knows this but me. However, our piano was a half a step flat, of course, always, the old upright. And I learned Grieg's Piano Concerto by heart, but in B flat minor. It never dawned on me that it's Grieg's Piano Concerto in A minor. But for me to sound like the recording, I had to play a half step. And that was, it was good for me, but it was very innocent. And of course, it couldn't touch the original version, but I did learn the whole piece. Because I truly thought that all pianists could play everything out there, and I hadn't learned yet.
That's not a bad approach at the start, is it?
But I remember hearing a lot of hillbilly piano players where they play that Salone type of trills, and I just thought that was exciting. Then these boogie-woogie pianists with those strong left hands, and then the strides. So I had my work cut out for me, but I was up for the task. I thought I was going to do it all. I found out soon afterwards that no, I won't be doing it all, but I'll do a lot of it.
You caught a break, I gather, when a couple of hotshot producers rolled into New Orleans looking for new talent and were doing auditions, and you were the accompanist. And at the end of it, when they couldn't come up with anybody, my understanding is somebody said, well, why don't we try the guy on the piano?
Oh, yes. Well, when Minute Records was starting, I was there to accompany several of the artists, kids around town, because they knew that I played all the songs off the radio. So if they were going to do a song of the day, I would probably know it. So I was there to play behind most of them. And Larry McKinley and Joe Banishak, who was starting Minute Records, they were the honchos. So after the auditions were over, they called me into the office. It was a radio station, actually, and called me into the control room and asked would I come in and be their music person, tell who they thought may have come and worked with them later, being Harold Baptiste, was to come, but he was out with Son and Cher at the time. And so I said, well, I'd gladly pinch it until he get here if that's what you'd like. And I got right to work the next couple of days, and they were very satisfied with me. I was overwhelmed to be with them, and Harold stayed where he was, and I stayed with that company.
Yeah.
It was a good thing for me.
You started too, and it's amazing to me when I read about it, the number of, you say, those local kids who are coming and hanging around the house during the day with you, Irma Thomas and Joe Tex and Benny Spellman and all of these people, and you're writing material tailored to each one of those.
Oh, yes.
Where did that capacity come from?
Well, I had been mimicking so much off the radio, till after you do that a lot, you get tools in your reservoir. You get tools in your toolbox that songs have this, that, and the other. So you're able to put that together after a while. I guess it's like any other trade that you do enough, you can improvise after a while. And writing songs was like improvising on what you already know about. And let me clarify one thing. Among those people wasn't Joe Tex, even though I loved him and worked with him later, but Ernie Cato, folk like that. And I think because I have such high regards for Joe Tex, love that guy. Good writer, arranger, everything when he was around. But I listened to so many recordings, so you're inspired to join in the writing. After you mimic everything all day long, you just have an inkling to want to install something yourself.
Did that come naturally for you then, the lyric part of it, when you started doing it? Yeah.
I started writing simple melodies first, just to play around with at home. But at 12, I began writing lyrics, and very humble lyrics, of course. But I found it quite nice to be able to say things that that you didn't know were already said.
Yeah. You have this reputation, or at least you did then, and I can't imagine that it's any different now, of being a perfectionist. And back then, I remember reading somewhere that you would very often write something, not be satisfied with it, toss it out. And you mentioned Ernie Cato a second ago. Mother-in-Law, one of his big hits, my understanding, was one of those ones that you wrote and tossed out and was retrieved from the trash can. Is that right?
Absolutely. Well, his approach, Ernie Cato's approach, and I love Ernie Cato. He was a strong advocate of the blind boys. He used to like Archie Brown and the blind boys, and they used to preach and shout, and he loved that kind of delivery. And when I first, I had 4 songs ready for him, and when I gave that one to him to do his part in it, he went at it with such a hard and brutal approach till I didn't think it could fit into this mode of what I had. And his second effort at it was the same. And I thought, well, this just wouldn't be good for him. Let's go on to the next thing, and discarded it because that was a regular habit of mine. However, one of the backup singers for that moment was Willie Harper, who he loved the song, and when we took a short break, he went and got it out of the trash can and told Andy Cato, look, man, try it again, and just calm down, man. Don't go at it like that. Try to do what he said. And when we tried it again, he did his part quite mildly, and I was very happy about that. I'm so glad Willie Harper was there to do that, because it was gone forever. Because for one thing, I had made that suit for him, so it didn't dawn on me to try it on someone else. Maybe I might have a little more sense now to try something on someone else, but at that time I was in I was so inspired and so moving all the time. I just caught things quickly.
You got drafted in '63. You spent a couple of years in the Army. You did your time.
Yes.
And then when you got out, by then you were getting into arranging, and you were still writing. And it was around about that time, was it not, that you hooked up with Marshall Seahorn, and that was the creation of Toussaint Studios? Is that right? I got the chronology right there?
Yes.
Yeah.
I came out of the military in '65, and it was time for me to change companies, which was Minute before, but Minute had to pretty much dissolve. When I went to the military, most of the artists scattered and went here and there. So Marshall Seahorn approached me and said, I would like to work with you at any capacity. He was a go-getter kind of promotion man during the days when you could sell records out of the trunk of your car. And I knew he was a go-getter. And I said, well, let's do it. Whatever we do, let's do it a 50-50 partnership. We went into a partnership, and we formed a record company called Toussaint. And we then opened a studio called Toussaint. However, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have named a record company Toussaint, because that's only 5 cents. We should have named it Milsou or something like that. But we had a good time. Yeah. It was a good run with Marshall Seahorn.
The deal with the studio was that you were going to take on Muscle Shoals and the other guys, right? That was the hope, and it wasn't quite realized, was it?
It wasn't our thought, though.
No?
we only opened that studio because Cosmo closed up. Cosmo's recording studio was the studio that we were well satisfied with, where all the big hits were done. Fats Domino, Lloyd Price, Little Richard, everybody, and including us. And Dr. John and I got our start there. We were always satisfied with Cosmo Studio, but it closed down. So we had to open a studio just to have somewhere right nearby rather than to have to leave town.
Yeah.
So that was our total purpose. If Cosmo wouldn't have closed, we would never have built a studio.
You were writing, too, during this period of time, and suddenly, with the British invasion and everything, a lot of these bands were covering your tunes. Suddenly, you were one hot commodity. The Stones were covering you, Dave Clark 5, Herman's Hermits. I think Ringo Starr even covered one. Didn't he? Lipstick Traces?
And a cappella. Yes. That was a delight for me to be covered by these guys from so far away. And I like every version I've ever heard. Some of them stayed pretty near, and when some of them would be adventurous enough to move it over slightly to the left or right, I dearly appreciate that. It's like having long-distance collaborators, and to know that they cared enough to spend time to learn it, and like it, learn it, and record it.
Yeah.
That's pretty big.
I got to tell you that as we were driving from Ottawa to Syracuse today to talk to you, in the car on the way down, me and the boys were listening to a lot of your material, and a lot of it we were listening to recorded by Lee Dorsey. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with him.
Lee Dorsey and I spent loads of time together, off and on, in and out of the studio. We rode motorcycles, the same bunch of guys, 30 guys on motorcycles. Lee Dorsey and I were two of them. We raced Cadillacs together sometimes.
You raced Cadillacs together?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, he was a body and fender man. He was a superb body and fender man.
Oh, that's how he started, right? That's what he was doing.
Yes,
yeah, right.
He was the very best. He never bought a new Cadillac. When Cadillacs would come out, he would go to old junkyards and get spare parts and make a new Cadillac, or new whatever he wanted. And it was always better than yours. And it had other stuff that the factories didn't put on them. When it was time for motorcycles, he went to the junkyard and got parts and had the best-looking motorcycle that ran the best, looked the best. He was quite a guy.
It was almost like music was secondary to him. His real love was being a body and fender man.
Oh, yes, that was his daily activity. When even in his highest heyday, when he'd come off the road, he'd get right in his greasy clothes and get him a pack of Pall Malls and a half a pint of Chevy's Regal and some Pall Malls, and go to Ben and Fenders. And he had some colleagues who would spend the day around him because he was a high-spirited guy. And he was a very happy guy, so people liked to be around him. And he and quite a few guys would be around the grease shop all day, bending cars and performing miracles, you might say. But he dearly loved singing. And he liked recording. He liked being in the recording business. And he liked himself as well. And I say that because when we would ride motorcycles, we'd stop from time to time because motorcycles weigh you down pretty quickly. We'd all stop at certain lounges, and Lee Dorsey would go right away and go sit by the jukebox and play his own recordings and sit there and listen and sing along with them. You know, well, I think that's like it.
Yeah, I guess. I got to ask you now. I'm going to reach down here and get a shot of this. This is from my own collection.
All right.
Check it out.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. One of the originals.
Yes.
Now let me ask you, in light of this, about your own recording and your own singing. When did you start doing that? In amongst all these other things we've been talking about, when did you start doing this sort of thing? Steve
Terrell is the reason that I ever sung as myself on a recording, because I had been singing backup behind Lee Dorsey and lots of folks. But we would move. Marshall Sehorn always was promoting our artists to other companies, and he was promoting one of the groups to Scepter and Warren Records. Steve Terrell was working for Scepter, and he said, "Yes, we'll take this artist, but we want Alan to sing and to give us an album on him. And that kicked it off. And that was quite a stretch for me because I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I didn't mind singing enough to teach the artist how the song goes, but not for me to present it to the world. But I'm glad he did. But I must say that on the totem pole, singing is the last thing on the totem pole for me.
Okay.
I like the arranging. I like arranging for orchestras and funky horns. I like writing and, of course, playing the piano first of all.
Let me ask you about arranging, because I've read some quotes from you talking about arranging and how you make sure that you only put the right amount of each thing in each song. Tell me what you mean by that exactly.
Well, as a very young person, I used to overwrite horns because there's a song going on here, and I have a chance to get horns to play something that I'm not playing, but they can do whatever I tell them to do. So you're playing God. So I would have a chance to get these horn ideas on a recording. And I can remember going too far sometimes, overwriting the song and forgetting where the focus is. However, I didn't live in that chaos too long. I respect the song and what the song is saying, and I come to the conclusion that the song must live. So whatever else is should not give it competition. So I think that's what led me to be more economical about what else to put in with whatever is being said.
So when you hear other stuff now, you've got to hear stuff that's over arranged all the time. It must drive you nuts, I'm thinking.
Well, not much, because everyone has their moments, and some things are colossal. It's according, because some things may be overdone in one way but not in another. But I think the worst is too many notes. I like what's going on today, and I like what's going on generally everywhere, because everywhere has signatures. And I think it seems like most of the good arrangers are cognizant of not to overdo it. And, it's not all about getting their arrangement across, but getting this song across.
Yeah. Let me ask you about New Orleans and Katrina, because that changed a lot of things for a lot of people. What did it change for you?
Katrina was a blessing for many, and for me as well. Katrina put more of our musicians to work immediately afterwards than ever before. Some of the musicians who were never in demand to go anywhere 5 miles outside of town, now was hundreds of miles away. And wherever they were, usually, proprietors would call on them because they didn't have to fly them in. There's one right in my neighborhood. There's one near you. So there were more musicians working right after Katrina than any other time. With me, it connected me with some folk and got me out of my comfort zone, because I stayed in one place mostly. In the studio most of the time, an isolated room where I felt comfortable in writing, and whatever I was doing usually came to me. But Katrina got me up out of my comfort zone and sent me. I had to migrate somewhere else. I went to New York for a couple of years. I had never done such before, but it connected me because I was right in the midst of a lot of other things that was going on. One of the marvelous blessings was my connection with Elvis Costello again, because we had done it a couple of times before, but not at the magnitude as we did after Katrina. But I did concerts, benefits for Katrina, which people from all over the world had said yes to and came together, like the Madison Square Garden thing. And I began doing gigs, because I wasn't gigging before. I did about 3 gigs a year. But after Katrina, I actually started touring. Elvis and I did a couple of tours we did one as a duet, even out of the country. And then we did a couple of tours with full complement band, everything that was on the recording. That was really wonderful and exciting and new for me. And it hailed me to begin doing things on my own, performing, doing brief tours. I felt like a child. I mean, this was new territory, but it was quite rewarding because I had spent most of my life in the studio waiting for the red light. And we'd like to get through that red light on to the mixing board and on to the plastic product, the petroleum product, on to the public. And then after Katrina, I'm on stage, and there they are.
Yeah.
Forget the red light.
Yeah.
So that was quite rewarding.
Let me ask you in our last couple of minutes then.
Yes.
The Brighton, Mississippi.
Yes.
Which I love, and a lot of people do. A lot of my friends love it. But I couldn't help but think that, and it's a departure for you in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And my first thought, and I know the thought of a lot of other people, was that Katrina had something to do with that. Is that possible?
Well, Joe Henry produced that.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Henry, he called me before Katrina I had never heard of Joe Henry, but he knew me by reputation some way. And I went out and did a project with him and Billy Preston and Irma Thomas and Mavis Staple and Ann Peoples, just really great. After Katrina came along and we did a couple other things, he wanted to produce a recording on me, a whole album, I still call them. And I thought he wanted some more of the New Orleans funk that I'm fairly known for.
Uh-huh.
But he chose all of those wonderful treasures of songs, and he chose all of the musicians. And I just thought it was delightful that he heard me in such a light. Because if I was thinking of someone going to produce me, I wouldn't think they would be going in that direction.
Yeah.
So I took to that, and it was a very smooth, wonderful Silk Road to travel. I'm so glad he opened that highway, because I had passed there several times, but I never turned that way. But there was many songs on there I had never heard, a couple I didn't like, but once he said that, then I stopped not liking it. Now I find it some of my favorite songs.
Well,
like I couldn't stand St. James Infirmary.
I was just going to say my favorite track on the album is St. James Infirmary.
Now it's my favorite.
Brilliant.
Yes, it's one of my favorite songs.
Excellent.
But I used to think it was such a terrible message. Went down to the morgue and all that, or wherever. But now I love St. James Infirmary. It's one of my favorite songs. So that was quite a blessing for me, Joe Henry.
I'm so happy that you gave us this time before a concert, before a performance. This is very nice of you to do this, and it's been a great pleasure for me. It was a treat to meet you. I've always wanted to. Thank you very much for doing this, Al.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.